so I'd like to welcome you to this celebration of life, of the life of Clement Moorman, the opportunity God provides us to worship and spend time together. Among the many gifts of providing this day and time is we share the gift of having some time and perspective. You know, Clem might have been 101, and for most of us, Clem was always going to be here. You know, that just was. And even though he's 101, and I got my hair cut this week, and they said, "You doing anything?" I said, "Well, I'm doing a service for a gentleman that was 101. They said, "Well, at least he survived that long and had a wonderful life." But part of me was thinking, well, I always thought that Clem would still be here today. And so even though he might have been 101, we come here with having a week to kind of prepare ourselves for being here. And as I continually describe life, it seems like the more time we have, the better chance of placing life and our journeys together with a sense of proportion and context of who we are and whose we are. We are all here because we consciously want to honor and remember and share what a wonderful man Clem was for us. And I would believe that Clem would affirm this, that we are also here to affirm the gift of the relationships that we have, that we honor, that we live our lives being connected with one another and being here. This is a time where we recognize the relationships that we have with our family and friends, and for Clem, a deep and abiding faith and trust in the resurrected Christ. As within this context, we come to hear a sacred story, a human story, a special story, and we will do that together. These words are come from Scripture. "Come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord," says the Spirit. They rest from their labors, and their works follow. We gather this day to celebrate the wonderful life and witness of faith that Clem Moorman provided us all. We come seeking to hear God's words of hope and continuing comfort as we celebrate the good news of Christ's resurrection. I believe that at a time like this we recognize that our hope at death is the same hope that sustains us throughout our journeys of life. We continually hope that the God who loves us and embraces us and cares for us throughout our life continues to love us and embrace us and cares for us at death. Because whether we live or whether we die, a common trait that we all have is we all belong to God. So in this context, in this wonderful place with these wonderful people, let us look to God in prayer. Eternal God, we bless you for the great company of all those who have kept the faith, finished their race, and now rest from their labors. We individually think of those dear to us who've already joined you and name in our hearts. Especially as you bring us to this time and this place, we thank you for Clem, whom you have now received into your presence. Help us to believe where we have not seen, trusting you to lead us through our years. Bring us at last with all your saints into the joy of your home. We pray these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. And the first song we are going to sing is "Lord, You Have Come to the Lakeshore." This is one of Clem's favorites.
First reading is from Colossians chapter 3, verses 12 to 17. As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you are called in the one body. And be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. Teach and admonish one another in all wisdom, and with gratitude in your hearts, sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs to God. And whatever you do, in work or deed, do everything in the name of Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. The second reading is from Psalm 139, verses 1 to 4, and 23 and 24. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my thoughts. See if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. The last reading is 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 to 8. Beloved, let us love one another, because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love.
Amen.
Here ends the reading.
Glenn loved this song. He always asked me to play it, so got his tie on. I don't wear ties. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, help me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call, hold my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. God bless you.
Bonnie Shepherd put together the obituary. Would you please spend 2 seconds and
Chris asked me to talk for a couple of minutes about my remembrances of Clement. Actually, I could easily talk for an hour about him, but of course, so could most of you here. The first time I saw Clement play professionally, when I hardly knew him, was when I walked into Martha's Vineyard, not having any idea that he was playing at that restaurant. The last time I saw him at a restaurant was at the High Lawn Pavilion on April 28th. I won't ever forget him and Chris walking up to the portico where Stuart and I were waiting for them for lunch. He came up the driveway in a classy-looking, casual black leather jacket that I'd never seen him wear before, with a tee and, of course, his signature jewelry, the gold chain with the music note hanging from it. He was ill, but he looked spectacular. Go, Chris. You kept your man looking spiffy all the time. For me, being with Clem was always a history lesson. At the High Lawn, when we were at the High Lawn on Eagle Rock Avenue, he talked about the day when his Boy Scout troop got off the bus they took from Newark and walked all the way up the top of that long, long hill at Eagle Rock to get to the park. He said their scout leader worked them hard all the time, both to strengthen them and to build their character. And even at a young age, Clem understood that and admired what his Boy Scout leader was doing and admired the leader. Pretty perceptive, I think. How in heaven Clem remembers everything from 10 decades of life I will never ever understand. But he does. I had the honor of driving Clem to St. Barnabas for some treatments when Chris was recuperating from surgery months ago. Babs came along with us once as well. That time in the car was pure joy. As Clem talked about his childhood, about Newark, and about his love for his beloved Chris. Okay, now put your hands on your ears here. Of course, he told me that I was a better driver than Chris, but let's not tell her that. You should know that at St. Barnabas, Clem was treated like the celebrity he was. From the guys who ran up to open the door of his car, to the receptionists, to the clinicians, they were all excited to see him. I'm going to borrow some of Bab's words here. She said it was so easy to make Clem laugh. So long as you were down to earth and honest, his eyes would light up, his smile and laugh would follow, and you would find yourself laughing at him, laughing at you, and it was good. Clem was devilish, and he and I would banter back and forth all the time. The last time I saw him, I said, "I'm leaving for now, Clem. Do you think you can behave yourself till I get back?" By then, he was pretty much totally unresponsive. But I truly believe, that he turned his head just an inch, letting me know that he and I were still joking back and forth. Lastly, I want to say that if you want to know the depth of Chris and Clem's family's love for him, you just have to watch Chris and her daughter Kathy and Chris's sister Karen as they took care of Clem all the way through. And his kids, who certainly didn't live nearby, drove to see him all the time. During the last month or two, whenever I was there, either Chris or Kathy was by Clem's side every second. Nobody was getting any sleep. The day after Clem left us, Kathy was finally plopped down trying to rest just a little bit, and Chris and I were at the table sipping Baileys as we talked about him. I don't think Chris has gotten any rest yet. Clem is gone from us, but the streets of heaven are crowded as the angels are listening to Clem play and sing and share his stories. The angels and saints are thrilled to have this ultimate entertainer with them. And I know he's happy, healthy, sending his love to Chris in so many little ways, and delighted to be with his Lord, to whom he was so devoted. Thanks for the memories, Clem.
For a while, we'll do this a little differently. I'd like to hear Clem's story. And I realize there's a lot of story to tell. Before we even started the service, somebody who grew up and went to the 13th Avenue Presbyterian Church with him told me that story, and I'll get there later. But, in Newark a long, long time, and grew up there, figured out what it meant to, with his siblings and his parents, how to figure out life. During one of our children's message, I asked, when did you realize you wanted to play the piano? And he looked at me with a very unusual look, and then reminded me that his mom said, you're going to learn to play the piano, and you need to go visit your older sister in order to do that. And then life continued for him. What would be pieces of Clem's life that I and we need to know in order to appreciate him at this time?
I'll admit it. I was a daddy's girl. From the beginning to the very end. In the vernacular of my father's earliest youth, and in the career of his choice, Clem Moorman was a beautiful cat. He was beautiful when he had me at age 24, and he was beautiful all his life. He was a very devoted dad to all his children. But I believe he perfected his parenting while raising my beloved brother Dennis and me. After our mother Edna passed, and he tried his best to be the very best daddy he could be. He was patient, attentive, and interested in every part of our lives. He made our home happy with music, laughter, and many, many good times. Later, I acquired a sister, Melba, and 2 brothers to join the family. And we had amazing good times as we traveled the country on our vacations from school. It was fun to be with my dad and traveling because he had a big Cadillac and it was very comfortable. And I would sit next to him and kind of help him drive. I will always remember, though, that family life for him included strong character building. And he would not tolerate lies from any of us, from the youngest to the eldest. He would tell us the lesson of being truthful and being kind to one another and to everyone we would meet. When others behaved and performed low, he taught us to go high. He would not tolerate anyone being treated less than he wanted to be treated himself. It was very hard living up to his ideals. But I believe we achieved some of them. He was our playmate at the beach, our bike riding partner on the boardwalk in Atlantic City, and always a loving companion, and tender and affectionate with his children. My father also carefully checked on our progress in school and If he was unhappy with what he saw on the report card, he went to the teachers and found out what was going on. Of course, he never had to go to school for me. I remember that at the age of 14, my dad took me to get my first driver's learner's permit. And we did that in the summer that we lived in Las Vegas. But some years later, he was so proud when he took me to get my first car. And for some of you who might remember how long ago this was, let me just say that it was a Nash Rambler.
Wow.
But he was very proud of me. As the time passed, we all developed our own lives and spread to many areas throughout the United States. But he always kept in touch with us. He would call when he was able to. He would write handwritten letters, unheard of today. He would call, and when possible, we would visit him. My brother Dennis and my father became daily phone pals as they learned and discussed new music and played the piano for each other from their own homes. And they would compare, take notes, and were very close as time went on. And I celebrate their love late in their lives. And I also celebrate with all of you and Chris's family and my family that I would like you to know we are all here in celebration. My daughter Stephanie, my cousin David, my cousin Douglas, who came from California, I thank you. My daughter's boyfriend, Demetrius Morris, my children, my grandchildren, Sade, her children, Jordan and Logan, and my sister-in-law, my brother Dennis's widow, Lynette Moorman, and their son, Russell. And I see many friends. I thank you all so much for helping me celebrate as the daddy's girl. Thank you.
When my cousin Clementine mentioned the Cadillac, every time I see one of those big fin Cadillacs from the 1950s, it just takes me right back to Uncle Clem's house on Rose Street in Newark, which was like my second home. And like every time I see one of those Cadillacs, it just takes me right back to that period.
Right on.
I'm a kid all over again on Rose Street. And it was just a thing that I can say about him. To sum it up is, you know, of course, I knew him my whole life, and I watched him. His character didn't change, and his personality, his wonderful, warm personality, didn't change, and he got older and older and older, and eventually, you know, he was 100 years old, but he never actually got old. He never got old. And that's a wonderful example. That's a wonderful example. And that's what he set for me. A wonderful example. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Russell Moorman, Clement Moorman,
my grandfather. I didn't get to spend as much living time with him as I would have liked. Pastor Wilkinson, you talked at the beginning when you spoke about honoring our living relationships. Something my grandfather was very good at doing. He honored his living relationships. And he never, to know him, you know this is true, he never got stuck in one place. It was a big belief of his, a core belief of his, to keep moving through things, keep going. And I admired that about him. I did. You know, some people have said to me that I remind them more of him than of my dad. And when I look at pictures of him when he was a young man, I think, you know, he was very good looking, so I'm okay. I'm good with that. You know? You can tell me I look like him all day long. But I will tell you that my early memories of my grandfather go back to Custer Avenue. And there was a dog there that I was pretty afraid of. This past week, for work, I'm a hotel manager down in Florida. And, you know, when you have a staff of people, a lot of people want to, you know, when something this happens on your door, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And I certainly appreciate all those things, I do. But what I finally said to our leadership team when we met on Wednesday, I said, you know, my grandfather was 101 years old. Just let that sink in for a second. He was 101. That's a century of a year. A life that has lived that long and has been lived that well is not just something to celebrate. Honestly, it's a gift. It's a gift to everybody you touch. And as Randy and I were talking about at the start, by the way, the song was hot. It was great. That was great. Randy and I were talking when I first got here. 101 years, that's a lot of reach. That's a lot of lives touched. And I am, you know, certainly as Maya Clement said, thankful to see all of the celebratory faces and hear the stories, the accounts of who it was. I'll tell you a quick story about him that relates to me that my mother reminded me of yesterday when we were having lunch. The story of a nickname that my grandfather acquired, apparently thanks to me. I was probably, what do you say, 8 or 9 when this happened. You know, my grandpa, he was a performer. He was every bit of, like, I mean, I make sure I wore cufflinks today because of how this man presented himself all the time. I go to work and people look at me and they're like, do you dress that way every day? Yeah, when I come here. Why? Because I want you to look like that. I want you to look like this. And why do I want to look like this? Because he looked like that. People talk about kids don't have role models to look at. Yeah, that wasn't my problem. I had my grandfather and I had my dad. But anyway, so, you know, apparently I was 8 or 9 years old, and a man who, you know, as David said, he really never seemed to age, if you know what I mean. Yeah, the numbers change every March, but honestly, he never seemed to age except that he got wiser. So anyway, here I am, you know, this is obviously 40 years ago or so, and I decide that I'm going to tell my parents in front of my grandfather how excited I was, because I was excited, always to go over to New York to see my dear old granddad. Well, my dear old granddad, I don't know if he took exception. I think he actually had some fun with the fact that I put the word old in the description of it, right? You call my grandfather anything he wants, I'll call him. So, deciding to have some fun, he decided that his new nickname in our correspondence was going to be Dear Old Granddad. And Chris is nodding because she knows this is true. There is no correspondence I got from him. Card, handwritten letter. There's no correspondence I got from him in the 40 years since that does not have D-O-G. Dog for dear old granddad as the signature line. It's absolutely true. I should have brought one up. But every single letter he ever wrote to me, every card. And we joked about this, and we joked about it up until the last time I spoke to him about it. The last time I talked to him was a good joke. It was right before Chris's birthday. It was the last conversation I had. And we were joking still about that. I'll tell you what, you know, I can go on and on. The others need to speak and should be heard. And I am grateful for our family and what we have gotten from him, the legacy he leaves us, the legacy he's left, with Chris's family. And, I see it most evident in Randy and some of the things that I see on Facebook and things like those. But I know it's a large and a robust legacy. I will wrap up by telling you this. It's a quote from Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher. He said, "Death smiles at every man. All a man can do is smile back." That man was smiling back.
Amen, bro.
Always things. Mark, there's a couple things that were brought to our attention. Mark Costa, one of our elders, is going to read something that we received from the city of Newark. You guys do it? Whatever you like to do. Yeah. Go for it.
So this is a package we received from the city of Newark today I guess. It is from Mildred. Sorry about my voice, I'm a little choked because I love Clement so much. This is from Mildred C. the president of the Municipal Council of Newark, dated July 28th, 2017, to the family of Leroy Moorman. On behalf of the Newark Municipal Council, I want to extend our deepest condolences. The loss of a loved one is never easy to accept, and no words of comfort will ever suffice for your great sorrow. We, the governing body, pray that God will grant you, his family and friends, courage and strength during this difficult time. Mr. Moorman was an inspiration to so many people with a career spanning from the 1930s. He was known for his many talents. What a marvelous career God afforded him. Mr. Moorman, affectionately known as Clem, will be greatly missed, but leaves a legacy that will not soon be forgotten. If you ever need assistance, please do not hesitate to call my office. May God bless you. Signed, Honorable Mildred C. Krupp, President, Newark Municipal Council, and staff. And along with that came a proclamation, which I won't read the whole thing, from the City of Newark. I'll read the top. City of Newark, New Jersey, the Newark Municipal Council hereby issues this resolution expressing profound sorrow and regret at the passing of Mr. Clement Leroy Clem Moorman. And there's quite a bit written here, I can't read all of it now, but this is part of the life of my buddy Clem.
I know.
He touched me, very short. I had the privilege of sitting in back of Chris and Clem for many years at church. He touched my life and my spirit and my heart in ways that I can't even tell you. To say the man was special is an understatement. He was truly, truly a gentleman. He was just a wonderful, warm human being, and I will never, ever forget him.
Amen, brother.
Well, for the love of Clement Leroy Moorman, raise your hands and shout amen. I'd love to. Amen. That's right. Because there was no spirit like that guy. And if we all have only one thing in common in this room and all across the country, it's that we all love Clement. Clement Leroy Moorman, what a name, what a man. I think we can all agree one of the first things that comes to mind when we think of Clement is he was one of the kindest, gentlest, yet strongest we have known. A true gentleman, a man of integrity and perfection. Now he made sure that we knew about how perfect he was. Because he said, nothing's perfect except me, of course. And we'd all laugh and we all knew. So my sister Kathy confirmed the true gentleman part by looking up the definition of his name. But maybe she asked Siri. She might ask Siri. But either way, she came up with, she found that his name meant gentleman, which is irony. We all know that. We all shared time with Clement. There are thousands of stories and memories that we all hold collectively. Imagine the mini-series if we think. It'd probably be going on until the end of time. 101 years. I'm sure we'll all share a lot of these stories today afterwards, and rightfully so. Kathy's son Vincent witnessed as a child Clem's outreach of love and respect towards his family. It had great impact on them. Vincent is now 30, has gone back to college, and one of his most recent assignments was to write an essay about the letters that Martin Luther King wrote from the Birmingham prison cell. In the conclusion of that paper, Vincent wrote, "I was raised with a loving African-American grandfather, who I love with all my heart. He always taught me that white and black are just color, and it does not determine the type of person you are. That is so true." His advice and life lessons were important, but more importantly, the way he delivered the message. He spoke the truth and considered other people's feelings. He did not lecture, he listened. He did not belittle, he advised. Kathy adds, his presence always lit up the room. We were all blessed to have him as a friend, father, and grandfather. I love him with all my heart, and that will never go away. Right, Ralph? I also loved how much he loved and respected my mother. It's true. Clem loved Chris. Chris loved Clem. They made each other feel confident in a world and at a time when interracial marriages were not widely accepted, to say the least. An extraordinary couple fighting the odds all the way. Obviously worth it. They kicked out 45 years together. God bless. Give him an amen. That's the best you can do. Thank you. Sister Carrie's thoughts also reflect Clem's loving kindness, not only to her family, but to all that entered his world. He also very much appreciated the love and kindness and respect that was given back to him. They would have discussions about the huge impact we can have on people's lives and the world just by throwing a little kindness out there. So in his honor, we should always remember to be kind to each other, help each other, listen to each other, hold the door, say good morning, say thank you. Don't ever say goodbye, just say so long for now. That is how Clem lived, and he is forever in my heart. Right? Clem lived to perform and loved to act. Every time he heard a camera click, he would turn his head and smile. What a ham, I tell you. He loved it. We couldn't go anywhere. We all started every time we heard him turn his head. So, in my book, he wins the Best Dressed Man in the World Ever award. He loved his wardrobe, as Russell said. No matter where he went, he made sure he was together. Right? Keep yourself together. Fashion for him was big. He was a pro all the way. If you're going to get on stage, dress for it. Why not? Clem is well known for his hands. They were his lifeline. Always manicured. Nice job, Lisa. And packed with talent, he would always tell me, take care of your hands. I was a mechanic, he saw my hands, they were trash, but I finally did learn. It took me a while. Take care of your hands, he did. In fact, he used to put gloves on just to take out the trash. That's it. He meant it. And Clem would let very few people on stage with him. Ain't that right? I was fortunate to have that honor. But I can tell you it took all of my life and many years for me to be able to do it confidently. God was amazing. So I worked hard from the time Clem taught me how to sight sing bass as a 16-year-old in the choir he was directing. Till recently, before he passed, he asked me to teach him some guitar chords. I taught him some chords and threw in some new tunings of the guitar I was working on. It just made his head spin. He's like, I don't understand. What does that mean? I said, this is guitar. It's different from piano, and you have different options. So he was intrigued by it. I brought him some music, and we sat and we talked. It was like the student teaches the teacher. Told me if it took him a year, it might be easier for him, and he wanted to gig. Nothing but positive from this guy. Nothing but positive. As a performer, he engaged his audience from the start. Threw their names into songs he was singing, made them feel special. He never thought he was as good as he was. He was very, very humble. And he only cared that all of you were having the best time he had. So if you walked into whatever club he was playing, he would stop singing, but keep playing, start to talk to you. Like automatic. I used to shake his right hand while he continued the bass notes with his left hand. Always a warm welcome and a smile to greet you. He was and always will be the best, a class act. Without Clem's influence in my life, I honestly don't know where I'd be. If you think I'm a little rough around the edges, and trust me, I am, you should have known me before Clem started telling me, don't lose your cool. That was the biggest thing he told to me. Because once you lose your cool, there's no talking, there's no solving, there's no thinking, there's no nothing. He smoothed me out, helped me to make the man entertainer I am today. I'm very grateful. I know my girls are grateful too. I was always testing them with questions about music or spelling words. When they were younger, Clem used to give them money. Sometimes $1, sometimes $5. $5? That's your cue, Lord. We watched in amazement as Clem aged with grace. That actually lost track of our own aging. I just can't, I look at him and I go, oh my God, then I look at myself and I go, man, you're in trouble. We feel his life, but celebrate, we feel his loss, but celebrate his life. And we follow his lead, and we take heed to these words said many times by him, keep doing like you do. Just keep moving on. So rock on, Mr. Moorman, and thank you from the bottom of our very broken hearts. Thank you.
Chris had asked me to share some thoughts of her thoughts on her husband and share her many thanks to all of you. So these are her words. As I pondered my thoughts over these past months and the last week, I kept coming back to the word blessings, some of which you all expressed earlier. The Lord let Clem stay on this earth for 101 years as a gift or blessing to all of us. If one believes that we all have a purpose, then Clem fulfilled that purpose. He shared his struggles, his greatness, his teachings, his upbringing, his friendship, his kindness, and his gentle spirit. His presence alone was a blessing to us all. He was a gentleman, but more, a gentleman. You felt a special presence around him, and he was blessed with your friendship. The fact that you are all here is a blessing to him and our family. You're going to like this. Clem didn't like phonies, bagels, pizza, red sauce, red wine. But he loved his music, and he loved his piano. His daily afternoon Scotch sour before dinner, his occasional glass of Sauvignon Blanc, or preferably cloudy bed in a chilled glass. He loved his family, his friends, and his church family. He loved his vacations on Marco Island and our walks on the beach and the occasional Scotch sour on the balcony. He had to have his weekly Friday appointment at
Lisa.
the salon to get his nails done and to see Lisa. He enjoyed the never-ending, and I mean never-ending, Italian dinners at the Gustavinos. He looked forward to our date nights at Bucos and our Sunday dinner at Bucos to see Frankie Jr. After reviewing all photos, I told Clem, we had a great life, been to many places, saw so many things, met some wonderful people, and enjoyed good friends. At the florist on Monday, there was a young couple looking at flowers for their wedding. I had a chance to say to them, I hope you all have the same blessings that I've had for 45 years. There are a number of thank yous that Clement would want me to share. First and foremost, I'm extremely grateful that over this very difficult time, I was never alone. I was surrounded by my family and friends who would stop in daily and talk with Clement. My family never left my side. My sister Karen Fields, Kathy, Randy, Kate, Kerry, Paul, Jonathan, Kristen, John, and Jessica. I was blessed with your undying love and support throughout this time. Also a special thank you to our hospice nurse, Gloria, another blessing to us, providing for Clement's comfort and dignity. To Joanne and Bill Shaw for being with us when Clem passed. To Doctors John Siegel, Neil Lyman, Sabine Latorre, James Franklin, who blessed Clem and kept him with us all these 101 years. And to the Reverend Peter Wilkerson for his spiritual support, kindness, and friendship to us both these many years, most especially in these difficult times. Another dear blessing. Lastly, thank you to so many of you who were able to come and visit Clem over the past couple of months. Clem's big smile let you know he was happy to see you. It comforted me to know that you all thought so much of him. You all blessed me too with those visits. Thank you for sharing Clem's celebration of life today. Thank you.
Amen.
I just want to say a few words about what I'm going to play. One of the first Sundays after I met Clem, he came up to me after church and brought this music for me, Prelude to a Kiss, written by Duke Ellington. He loved it, and he really wanted me to learn it. He wanted me to play it, and that was one of the things that he just really wanted today, was for me to play this. It was very special to him, and I hope you'll enjoy it.
we've had lots of people share where the bar was for Clement, in terms of how one seeks to have a journey, a relationship, an engagement in life and faith. In the simple words from the Epistle of John, "Beloved, let us love one another, because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God." The bar of life not only is lived completely, but simply with this real simple thing of love. As we all know, there are moments where it is kind of simple, and other times it can be incredibly challenging, right? And then understanding the whole dynamic of relationships. As God's chosen one, holy and beloved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another. If anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other. In other words, how one looks at the relationships that we have around us and how one may approach it. We thought, as coming together, we might be mindful of the bar that Clem set for himself. And in one sense, we then shared stories of how that was experienced as we witnessed Clem's life. Lovingly, completely, with a sense of awe and wonder of what might be next. We all have our own stories or our own remembrances of how Clem touched us, that we will hold forever. And maybe some new stories that were added along the way. One thing that struck me today, the picture on the front of the cover of the bulletin, something that that really caught me today, it didn't catch me before. The gleam in Clem's eye. I'm sorry, man. You knew Clem at 13th Avenue Presbyterian Church, and you told me the story when he was you told me the story when he was, please, at 13th Avenue Presbyterian Church, there was a Sunday school class, or he's playing for the choir, right? If I remember the story right. And when I'm wrong, please go, you've got it wrong. And anyway, he was playing for a while, and then he began to play something, he played jazz, right? Everyone started to have fun, but in that era of time, you didn't do that, right?
Christian Endeavor meeting.
A Christian Endeavor meeting.
Yeah, and Mr. Moorman, I didn't know him personally, but my mother did, and she said he was playing jazz on the piano.
And then the minister walked in.
I knew Clem as a young boy. We grew up together in the 13th Avenue Church. And we always went to Christian Endeavor on Sunday evenings. Well, this particular Sunday evening, there was about 8 or 9 of us there in the church, and Clem was playing the piano. And I don't know what struck him. All of a sudden, he started playing jazz. And the rest of us started dancing. Oh, we were twirling around. And all of a sudden, everything stopped. And what? Our pastor had walked in. And there we stood. And I'll never forget those days as long as I live. And of course, Clem's mother and my mother were friends. So it goes back a long way.
We're reminded in that, and just sharing that, the sense of awe and wonder and the playfulness I suspect God has in store for us all in our journeys. You know, today's a day that it might be really easy to move in one way or another. And the gleam in Clem's eye reminds me of what might be most important. And that is, how do we get in the way, how do we get out of the way so people can begin to discover the truth of how we are to be in relationship with each other? Because Clem teaches us a way of living life completely and fully as God's children. A couple thoughts. The great theologian Duke Ellington once said, there are two rules in life. Number one is never quit. Number two is never forget rule number one. And I moved into this part of the world essentially 10 years ago. And one of the things I didn't realize when I first moved here is that Clement was 90 when I moved, right? Or 91. And he, you know, my family moved here later than I did, and he was playing at Borelli's at the time, and since I didn't have family and people to hang out with, I found when he would have breaks from playing, and I would wander into Borelli's and have a glass of whatever to have theological conversations with Clement. And what was really interesting is one time I just went up to him and said, well, you know, how's your week been? He goes, well, not bad. I've had 2 auditions in the city, and I'm doing this and this, and I'm going, well, that's wonderful. And then I think the next week I found out he was 92 or 91. And I'm going, oh my goodness. At 91, most of the people I work with on a regular basis aren't considering going into the city twice in public transportation or how are they going to get there to do anything. He never forgot Duke Ellington's 2 rules of life. You know, as being grounded in faith means one recognizes, as God truly did, that we have been called and created to live life fully and completely in relationship to God and each other. You know, it is important and vital on this day to celebrate and recognize the way God touches us, each in our unique way. And in one sense, because of how we've experienced Clement. Whether it is classiness in recognizing that life is lived being respectful in honoring who we are as we come out in public. Whether it is in that way of listening, which I suspect comes from his mother. Clement reminded me the main rule that he learned from his mother is to keep your eyes and ears open and your big mouth shut. And so we learn how we can love God and one another when we keep our eyes and ears open and our big mouths shut. But we can go there and figure that one out too. But the most important thing as we gather here is we recognize that life is not lived in the perfection, but in the humanness of our experience. Thinking of a young man who grew up in Newark 100 years ago, and then that journey only in one sense coming just a few miles up the road. But in one sense, that journey up the road has led in lots of different directions, and different places, different people. Seeing the best and at times the worst that our world can share. And always recognizing that at the base of everything was predicated upon love. Beloved, let us love one another, because love comes from God. And so we gather here this day to share stories and to smile. But in one sense, we also come here to recognize how God allowed us all the gift of watching how one person took that journey, lived that journey, and ultimately, when it was time to let go of this journey on this earth, so we could figure out what was next. What is next? I don't know. Actually, there are lots of different answers to that. For the people in the first 3 rows here, it's just trying to figure out what happens when you've lost a relative that you love so much. For those of us behind us, I hope it is more than just checking off that we have been respectful to families. And as we go across the street, I hope there are more stories that are shared as to affirm how we have celebrated and recognized and been touched by a wonderful person. But ultimately, we all choose and desire what that life and relationship means to us. And so I end this time in this space wanting to share what I found to be a truth, and I share this literally in every service I do. The best book on death and dying I ever read was written by a sports writer. And he was on Ted Koppel. For those of us who are old enough to remember Ted Koppel, the sports writer was watching Ted Koppel one evening, and his favorite professor in college was being interviewed because he had Lou Gehrig's disease. And there's no cure for Lou Gehrig's disease. And he realized that he needed to reconnect with this person that had been a vital part of his life when he was in college. And so this sports writer would travel from Detroit, Michigan, literally to this part of New Jersey to spend Tuesdays with a man named Maury Schwartz. And about week 12, and just the ugliness of Lou Gehrig's disease had begun to overtake Maury Schwartz's body. And as he went in to see him, he recognized that this might be the last time he physically sees this, Mitch Albom would see this wonderful, vital person alive. And even though Maury was able to speak, it was just one of those awkward times. What do you talk about with somebody who you don't know what's next? You know, how do you say, "I'll see you," or what should you say?
Later.
Later, right? And so as they were having this conversation, this uncomfortable conversation taking place, Maury Schwartz shared these words with Mitch Albom. "As long as we can love each other and remember the feeling of love we had, we can die without ever really going away. All the love you created is still there. All the memories are still there. You live on in the hearts of everyone you have touched and nurtured while you were here. Death ends a life, not a relationship. Death ends a life, not a relationship. Today's a day we celebrate completely.
Amen.
The gift of relationships.
Amen.
The relationships that we managed to have with this wonderful human being. The relationship that Clem has lifted up his whole life, the one he had with God. And the ability for God to look down and say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Thanks be to God for this gift. Thanks be to God for this opportunity to be together. And let us look to God in prayer. O God, before whom generations rise and pass away, we praise you for all your servants who, having lived this life in faith, now live eternally with you. We thank you for the gift of Clem, whose baptism is now complete in death. We praise you for the gift of his life, for all in him that was good, kind, and faithful. For the grace you provided him that enabled him to serve you and others faithfully. We thank you that for Clem, death is past, pain has ended, and he has now entered the joy that you have prepared. Great and gracious God, we thank you for stories that we can now claim as our own. The remembrances of the pieces of Clem that we need to keep alive, of what we may have learned and experienced as we have experienced Clem in these many years. So we humbly now come before you, seeking your comfort, preparing to share his story and your story in everything that we will do. And may your comfort and peace be with us now and forever. Amen. Amen. We come from different traditions and maybe different faith traditions. One of the prayers that is important in our tradition is called the Lord's Prayer, and I invite you to please join me if you would, please. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Let's now stand if we are able, and we will sing the Song of Hope. Great and gracious God, we thank you for the chance to reflect upon who Clem has been for us and is for us and will be for us. As we celebrated this time together, now allow us to break bread together, for we recognize that as we break bread, we experience you in our midst. So bless the time that we will have and the food that we are about to share, for the glory of you in all of our relationships. It is in Christ's name we pray. Amen. Amen. My benediction to us all as we gather here this day. Let us be mindful of how we've been called and loved by the one who brought us here. And be mindful of that presence and that promise. Let us prepare to go out in the world. And may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon us all and give us peace now and forever. And let the peace of Christ be dwell in our hearts now and forever. Amen.
God gave us all this wonderful life. Gave us a long time to enjoy. So be faithful and be true. Whatever you do, so good things come to you. As the trees of green, red roses too. I see them shine for me and you. I found that quiet will